Velkommen til en ny episode av Oppdagelsesreisen rundt Torinokledet. Og i dag skal du få møte en spesiell mann, som man kanskje tenker han har hørt navnet på, men vi har ikke hørt om han før.
Han tror jeg ikke veldig mange i Norge har hørt om enda.
Men det er Jeremiah Johnston.
Jeremiah Johnston. Ikke Johnson, men Johnston med T. Ja. Nei, han tror jeg nok vi kommer til å høre mer om i tiden fremover. Han er en mann for fremtiden, for å si det mildt. For han har tatt solid teologisk utdanning, og har vært brukt veldig mye nå i 2025-2024, så har oppmerksomheten rundt han mer eller mindre eksplodert, fordi at han har en akademisk trening fra Oxford, som gjør at han kan snakke det samme språk som verdens mennesker, som akademikere innenfor både teologi og vitenskap. Og det gjør at han har en sånn bra kombinasjon da. Og så er han jo meget altså språkmektig, dyktig i formidling og alt dette her, som gjør at han formidler på en veldig forståelig og god måte. Og så vil vi se, når dette programmet starter, at det har en litt annen start enn vanlig, for da ser vi bildet av Torinokledet med en webside som er en invitasjon til deg til å gå inn på og lese mer om. Men her er åpningen litt, vi ser Asia-link der. Fortell om koblingen her, Erik. Ja, kan du si. Ja, nei, grunnen til det er jo ganske enkelt at vi i Asia-link, vi jobber jo da med unådde folkegrupper og har fokus på det. Og vi intervjuer jo mennesker da ofte i Asia. Men så tenkte vi at vi jobber jo med Jesus. Vi er jo veldig fokusert på det med Jesus, for det er jo det som er forvandlingselementet i Asia også. Og da tenkte vi at vi lager et program, og så snakker vi om Jesu oppstandelse. For at Jeremiah har fokusert på dette. Han var faktisk en skeptiker til 2022, kanskje litt inn i 2023, så var han en skeptiker til Torinokledet. Men så satte han seg ned og studerte sammen blant annet med en av hans mentorer, Gary Habermas, som er kanskje en av de mest anerkjente konservative teologer på oppstandelsen. Men han har også satt seg inn i hele denne tematikken rundt Torinokledet og sa, Jeremiah, du må nødt for oss å sette deg inn i dette. Og etter hvert som Jeremiah da har studert dette Torinokledet, så blir han bare helt overrasket over oss å se. Så han har jo da fått laget en full utstilling. Det er noen få, det finnes 5 kopier i verden, som har godkjenning da for å bruke hele denne her fullstørrelsen av Torinokledet. Og har fått også en skulptur da, som er i full legemstørrelse. Han har fått laget tornekrone, en replika av tornekrone, hvordan den så ut. Ikke som en sånn her, ofte så ser vi en sånn tornekrone som er litt mer der, men som er nesten mer som en hatt. Og hvis man ser på kongelige kroner, så ser vi at de er faktisk mer der enn de er en sånn liten krans. Og det stemmer overens når man ser da på de sårmerkene som man finner fra Torinokledet på hodet, at her har det vært mer eller mindre en sånn hjelm som var, og det gjør jo bare når man da vet at han ble slått i hodet, at det da trenger disse her tornene enda mer inn i skallen, og det ser man da merker over hele hodet, for man kan telle hvor mange dette her er. Han har fått laget en replika av spikerne som var i Jesu hender, han har fått laget replika av disse piskene som han bruker. Så alt dette har han da brukt, og bruker nå en god del tid, har vært på noen av de store podcastene og YouTubene, så hvis man går inn og sjekker Jeremiah Johnston, så kommer han opp på Michael Knowles, han kommer opp på Tucker Carlson, han kommer opp på flere av de store. Og så er han meget velskreven. Han har skrevet denne boka blant annet, som heter Body of Proof, der han gir da 7, kan vi vise bedre etterpå, 7 beste argumentene for Jesu oppstandelse. Og der er dette Torinokledet en av de. Og så har han skrevet en bok som kommer på nyåret i 26, som da går enda dypere inn i Torinokledet. For oppstandelsen, den er helt avgjørende for vår tro. Så det er bare å glede seg. Jeremiah har utrolig mye å komme med. En utrolig herlig type. Så bedre.
Ja. Så det blir bare så sett deg godt til rette, åpne hjertet ditt, og la Gud berøre deg også gjennom dette programmet.
Velkommen til Asialink TV. I dag skal du få være på noe som helt annerledes enn det vi vanligvis gjør. Vi jobber jo med unådde folkegrupper, og det finner du ut av både i bladet vårt og på websidene våre, asialink.no. I dag har det seg slik at vi i USA, og her jeg på en konferanse som handler om Torinokledet, og i forbindelse med det så har jeg en ung mann her som heter Jeremiah Johnston. Og han har dere mest sannsynligvis aldri hørt om, men jeg kan fortelle deg at han har skapt positive bølger her i USA, fordi han har hatt en vandring i møte med dette Torinokledet, og dette skal du få høre litt om i dette programmet her. Så det bare å glede seg, for dette kommer til å være dynamitt. Følg med. Jeremiah Johnston. This is awesome that you would take time out of a busy schedule to have this interview.
I'm delighted to talk with you.
For the Norwegian people, they don't know you, but you have a family.
I do.
You have a bunch of kids.
We do.
You have to use your full hand to count your kids.
That's right. That's
Five
right.
kids.
We do.
And their age is?
We have 2 teenagers, and then we have triplets that are 9 years of age. And my wife and I have been married over 20 years, so it's a very busy home.
You married very young, I understand.
Did.
Yeah, you were
I did.
15, 16?
No, I wish. I was 23, but my wife was 20, and I wanted to marry her before that. So.
There you go. Wonderful. You do have some also theological background and training.
I do.
Yeah. How has that been functioning in your life, the theological background? Is that important for you?
Very much so. I wanted to have the same educational pedigree that many of the apostates have who have left the Christian faiths. So for me, I did not go a confessional track for my education. I ended up in the intellectual Jerusalem, that is Oxford, and I was there residentially for 3 years working on my PhD in the physical bodily resurrection of Jesus. And at that time, I did a 93,000 word Überlieferungsgeschichte of resurrection, the history of resurrection belief in the Judeo-Christian motif. And that was published in an academic monograph series. I published now since then 250,000 words academically, not in popular books, on the physical bodily resurrection of Jesus. So I thought I had learned pretty much everything you could know about the resurrection from a scientific and evidentiary standpoint, but I couldn't have been more wrong, because during that time I was also very negatively predisposed to the shroud through my educational experiences at Oxford. I thought it was a Catholic relic, it wasn't worthy of my time, there was certainly nothing historical about it, so I thought, and I was certainly misguided in that. And so I've only recently, in the last few years, come to not only stake my academic reputation on the authenticity of the shroud, but to become one of the defenders of the shroud globally.
So, what was the convincing part? What was the things that really brought you from a skeptic to understanding that this might be real?
Right, Eric, that's such a good question, because I was very negative about the shroud. I thought it was a Catholic relic. I come from the evangelical background, Protestant background. I thought that, I lead biblical lands tours all over the world. I lead Reformation tours, I lead archaeology tours of Israel, I lead tours in the footsteps of Paul. I've been to the cathedral in Cologne where supposedly the 3 wise men are buried, and I just thought the shroud had that level of relic status, that there was nothing you could test in the physical sciences. And it wasn't until I got beyond my understanding of the shroud that was just simply shaped by secondhand testimony, not direct testimony, but the secondhand literature, where I actually began to read the reports for myself very recently. In fact, it was in the media tour, I wrote a book called Body of Proof, the 7 best reasons to believe in the bodily resurrection and why it matters today, which is just simply a popular spin-off of my PhD research. And in that media junket for the book, people like yourself just kept saying, well, what do you think of the Shroud of Turin? And I didn't have a good answer for them, because I had never really studied it beyond just hearing at Keble College, Faculty of Theology, that it wasn't legit, or there was no science behind it. So I thought, wow, I need to research this for myself. And I moved from skepticism to becoming a defender of it, because I realized that the greatest scientific minds of our time cannot explain how there is an image in this otherwise non-photographic, we all know that linen is not a photosensitive material, There is an image there that is very old. It antedates photography, it antedates anything from the medieval period. And when I looked into the fact that 102 academic disciplines have studied this for 600,000 hours, I've spent now months of my life reading most, if not all, of those publications by men and women who have staked their academic reputation on every aspect of the shroud, from the botany to the signatures of the soil to the hematological reports, the blood reports of the shroud. And then I applied my expertise in Jesus' death, burial, death by Roman crucifixion, and I became convinced the shroud is authentic. And that is what, then I just began sharing on YouTube channels and different interviews, slowly what I was learning. In many ways, it reminded me when I first started teaching grad school, now 15 years ago. I remember back in those days, Eric, I felt like I was 1 week ahead of the students. I was teaching grad school, but I was like a week ahead of them. I kind of feel like that as I'm joining now conferences like these and learning and gleaning from scholars such as yourself on the shroud, and able to bring that in whatever platform the Lord's given me. It's become a dynamic way to reach people with the gospel, talking about the shroud.
Oh, that's interesting. With Asia Link, we work normally with unreached people groups.
Right.
But I travel in Asia and we meet people there. We travel to the far corners and kind of very, difficult areas to reach. But in the Western world, there's definitely, I'm stretching now the terminology a little bit, but in the Western world, the Western mindset of scientism and naturalism is really hard to penetrate.
Right.
And do you think this could be something that could help in that regard? Because, as you say, there's so many scientists, more than 400 scientists, and more than 100 different areas and disciplines. And as you said, 600,000 hours. Yeah. So this is not something you can just scientifically just push away and say, it's just some relic.
Right.
This is something. Do you think this could be a tool that we could use to talk to people about this?
All I can speak on now is my experience, because we have a global exhibition now called Who is the Man of the Shroud that we take from community to community. And I am seeing physicists, scientists come to faith in Christ at our exhibits. And only the Lord could do that. And so without a doubt, it is a key that is unlocking the skepticism and opening up the skeptical mind to the truth claims of Jesus, which is huge. The shroud, unlike any other artifact, testifies to the life, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. Outside of the Bible, no other artifact does that. And that's why it's so important. That's also why I think the shroud is very misunderstood. It's likely the most lied about discovery we've ever had. There's a demonic hatred towards the resurrection of Jesus. I know this in my field of resurrection studies. And yet, when you look at it as well, I would add this. I think one of the greatest unreached people groups are the people sitting in our churches who know little to nothing about the Bible.
Wow.
They claim to be Christians, but they really don't read the Bible. They're biblically illiterate, and they need reminders about how true it is what happened on that first Easter weekend in Jerusalem, April 5th, AD 33. The shroud brings us face to face with what Jesus did for us. And to answer your question specifically, it's the greatest tool I've ever seen to evangelize people with the gospel. I've never seen anything like it, and it's at such a time as this.
Yeah. And as you said, it's a scientific thing.
Correct.
Because this is not just a faith thing. Do you believe in this? This is a scientific research that has done and come up with this. I mean, it's not signed by Jesus anywhere, but that would make it kind of suspicious.
Right.
But now what we do is, this is like a big jigsaw puzzle with so many parts and pieces that can only fit one person, basically.
Exactly. And when you look at that fact alone, it's powerful. When you look at, we're looking at when I'm studying history, I want to see artifacts. I want to see early eyewitness testimony and attestation. We see all of that with the shroud. And that's why I think it is so hated as well, Eric, because it's misunderstood. Most people haven't read the reports for themselves. And yet when you see the incredible body of work that supports the truth claims of Scripture, as it relates to the resurrection, using the shroud, it is compelling.
Yeah.
And many people have just faith in their own faith. That's not the kind of faith we see reflected in the New Testament. It's always faith based in evidence. Edon, this Greek word to see, is used 186 times in the New Testament. It's used 11 times in John 20, speaking about what happened at the empty tomb.
Yep.
We're not supposed to close our eyes and feel our way in our faith. We're supposed to open our eyes to the amazing evidence that's right in front of us. And that's what the shroud does. It really helps us open our eyes, and it really helps the skeptical mind. I mean, I'm a skeptical person. I'm a doubter by nature, and I love the fact that the shroud accepts that, understands that, and in all of our doubts and skepticism presents what I think is an unimpeachable case for its authenticity.
I think when you do the mathematical plausibility
Correct.
of all these parts coming together, you're up against astronomical numbers.
Correct. The probability factor is huge.
Yeah. It's almost like the universe and life coming from
Right.
nothing. I mean,
Exactly.
we're up at numbers that this is just not possible to do.
Yes.
So that is a good thing that science is also now helping us towards taking
Right.
that step of faith. And you're not stepping out in blind faith.
Right.
Here you're stepping into faith. I mean,
Exactly.
faith is coming towards you, and it shows you, gives you something that you can really say, well, this is physical. And then when you build on the Bible and everything, it just builds everything else.
Exactly, and it's at such a time as this too. I think it's fascinating when, I work in many archaeological digs. All of this technology is aiding the evidence for the gospel. It's not creating problems or barriers. With every new archaeological discovery, coupled with the new scientific advances we've made, my friend who's an archaeologist is essentially using CAT scan technology to read amulets and curse tablets that have Proto-Hebrew names of personal name of God on it from Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. I mean, it's amazing, and we see that same thing being unlocked with the shroud. I call it a controlled revelation tied to technology.
Yes. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
happening as we get closer to the return of Christ.
Yeah, because I mean, the studies that was done by John Jackson back
Yes.
in the 80s,
Right.
I mean, those facts are still there, and those are the ones they're still looking at.
Right.
In this conference here, there's 50 scholars here, including you, who will talk about the new revelation we've had through technology.
Right,
Because
exactly.
that is so much better today than when they were in their heydays.
Absolutely, and archaeology. What we know today, thanks to the material culture about Jewish burial traditions, the entire juridical procedure in the Gospels, meaning the trial and the execution of Jesus, all smacks of authenticity with what we now know of Jewish burial traditions because of archaeology. And that's a new science. That's something we didn't know 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Late Second Temple Judaism practice ossulegium, or second burial. All of that comes to bear when we look at the juridical procedure that happens related to the shroud. It's really remarkable to look at.
Yeah. Now, a little bit personal. What is the most convincing parts about the shroud? What speaks to you the strongest?
I have to be honest, all of it speaks to me in different ways.
Of course.
It's hard for me. It's like telling you which child I love the most,
Yeah.
because all of it smacks of authenticity.
Yeah.
The blood is really, I've been really looking at the hematological reports lately of how Jesus died. What was his cause of death? And I'm becoming convinced by just the hematological reports of the shroud that he had elevated ferritin, meaning he was having organ failure. He was experiencing liver failure. He was experiencing kidney failure. He was dehydrated. And then I think, well, what did Jesus say on the cross? I thirst.
Thirsting.
He likely lost 1/3 of his blood volume from the scourging, where he experiences 700 scourges. I mean, imagine that. We have 372.
I cannot imagine that.
We can't.
No.
372 scourges on the front and back, but we don't have the lateral sides. So if you play the math out, mapping over the body, it's something like 700 wounds. And this is when Pilate says, "Echo homo." He says, "Behold the man." Yeah. And only then, after that beating, does the crowd say, "Crucify him."
Yeah.
And so I've been studying a lot about the blood lately, and it's just amazing that the scriptures say, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. I can't imagine experiencing that with joy. It seems like it would be miserable.
Yeah.
And yet, you and I, and the world, we were on Jesus's mind as he was enduring this. My sin put him there. It should have been my hands, my feet. So much of this is personally applicable to me. That's why it all speaks to me in different ways. That's the beauty of the shroud.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned sometime in one of the podcasts I looked at, or the YouTubes, that you now almost feel it's your calling to speak about this.
Right.
But you have this society or this group called Christian
Christian
thinkers, yeah, as well.
Right.
Which is kind of more of a broader apologetic approach.
Yes.
But has this risen up through kind of all the apology? And now, I mean, I love to do the Bible and why can we trust the Bible?
Right.
Or why can we trust the historical Jesus?
Right.
But has kind of this now risen up as the main thing?
You know, Eric, that's very insightful of you because I teach all about Christian worldview.
Yeah.
Well, the center of a biblical Christian worldview, which we should all aspire to, is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. All of Christian worldview emanates out of the fact that Jesus rose again, period.
Totally.
And most Christians have a deer in the headlights look. They really don't know how to defend the resurrection. And so I'm a defender of the resurrection. That is what I've studied for the last 25 years and what I've talked about and spoken about and preached about and lectured about and defended in debates and dialogues all over the world. And what I love about the shroud is the more I know about the shroud, the more I understand the resurrection. The more I understand the resurrection about Jesus, the more affirmed I am in my own belief of my future resurrection, which is linked with Christ's resurrection.
Totally.
The promise that we're given 24
like
times.
the guarantee.
In the New Testament is the promise of John 14:19. Jesus said, because I live, you will live also. And so there's an immediate, not only exegetical payoff, but practical spiritual payoff that every Christian I know, like yourself, who is a scholar in the shroud and knows about the shroud, they're more affirmed in their own faith. It leaves you strengthened in your faith to study the shroud. And there is a hunger for this material in the world right now. And so I'm adding my voice with the many other great voices that speak on the shroud, and I'm seeing it as the greatest tool we have right now.
And you have been invited to some of the most leaders within the YouTube societies and people who are having a huge following there. And you're also traveling more than ever, I think.
Yes.
It seems like you, and presenting this. And you have even made an exhibition. Tell me about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Our ministry, Christian Thinker Society, is on tour with the Who is the Man of the Shroud exhibit produced by Athonia, where we have 50 artifacts. And we invite people at their own pace to go through the death, burial, and the resurrection of Jesus and all of the evidence, not just for the shroud, but for the resurrection event itself. Keep in mind, the resurrection of Jesus is so powerful as a historical event that it replaces the dominical tradition of Jesus, meaning his teaching. It becomes the central clarion call of the church. Wasn't Jesus said the golden rule, treat others as you would want to be treated? No. The central call of the church that causes the church to explode in the book of Acts is that Jesus was died, he was killed, he was murdered on the cross, but he rose 3 days later. And that becomes the rallying cry of the embryonic Christian church. And that's what takes the world upside down, so much so by Acts 17, verse 6. It says when the disciples come to Asia, these men have turned the world upside down, have come here also. And so we need to be able to defend the resurrection. It should energize us. And that's what I see happening with the shroud. And so I'm very thankful that many of these programs are having me on to talk about it because I just get to give them the gospel and use the shroud as an example of that impact.
Incredible. But this exhibition, you have a life-size,
We do.
kind of body size of Jesus.
It's beautiful because
It's made according to the proportions from the shroud.
The
is that right?
exact, yeah. So
The
we
exact
have,
proportion.
We have a one-to-one shroud replica purchased from Stera. It was Barry Schwartz's image that we purchased it from. So it's an authentic licensed replica. But then I'm a visual learner. I like to touch things. And we commissioned a bronze statue that is hour 39 of Jesus, the rigor mortis his body would have experienced, what his body looked like the moment before resurrection. And so you can walk up, Eric, and you can put your finger in the nails, which would be in the wrist.
Yeah, you were down here.
In the side.
Yeah.
And you can say at our exhibit, just like Thomas, my Lord and my God. And so we're seeing, I was talking with a colleague today at lunch, people are weeping when they go through this exhibit. People love Jesus already when they begin it, but they love Jesus even more when they get through the end of the exhibit. And we generally, it's a traveling exhibit, so it only lasts for 2 weekends and the days in between, so for about 8 days at churches across the world. And the fascinating thing, some people will come every day to the exhibit. They'll bring friends, they'll meditate, contemplate.
They do that when the shroud is on display
right.
in St. John's Church.
Isn't that powerful?
John
Yes,
Baptist,
yes.
When it's open, I mean, there's there's millions of people visiting the shroud. But
I had an interesting experience. I had the opportunity to see the shroud in Turin, Italy. And I got on my knees and I prayed right before the shroud. I'm not praying to the shroud. I was praying
of course not.
to Jesus and saying, Lord, you've given me these experiences. Make me a more ardent, clear, humble defender of this truth. Let me die defending this.
Yeah,
That
amen.
was my prayer.
I'm with you. Hey, Gary Habermas, he has written 3 huge volumes about the resurrection.
He's actually written 4 because I just edited volume 4 for him.
Oh, that is a massive work because they are really thick.
I edited volume 4 over Christmas for my friend Gary. It's very good. It's all about the practical impact of the resurrection.
But I mean,
his
4
magnum opus
volumes
on
then about the resurrection. Does that say something of the importance of resurrection? I mean, I'm going to say something that I'm probably going to be almost like claimed a heretic now, but we have been very focused on Jesus' death, on the crucifixion, Jesus on the cross. In Christian mindset, this is the big thing. Of course, and I don't want to take anything away from that. But Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 is very clear. If that was all, we would still be in our sins.
That's right.
And that's what I'm thinking, 3 minutes on why is the resurrection so important that Gary Habermas writes 4 volumes. I mean, I have 3 of them at home. It's about this big.
And you'll soon have the 4th that I edited.
The 4th one.
I think it speaks to the impact of the resurrection.
Is there something that we haven't caught there?
There is, because keep in mind, there's only 260 chapters on in the New Testament. There's only 260 chapters. We have 300 passages on the New Testament, and yet most believers feel ill-equipped to talk about the resurrection because they only hear about it on Easter Sunday,
correct?
Or if they happen to attend a funeral, which fewer and fewer people attend funerals nowadays. And so the church I find that the resurrection is understudied by most Christians. It's under-preached by most pastors. It's under-taught by most professors. And this has produced a breathless, anemic, weak Christian faith. The reason the faith expanded so powerfully globally was because of this belief, this very real belief. Oh, Jesus conquered the grave, so I can face anything because Jesus is alive. I have hope. I have a hope. Hebrews says that never dies. It never gets diminished. 1 Peter 1:3 says it's a living hope because of the resurrection. It empowers, it infuses us. And what I love about Gary's magnum opus, he is explaining all of the practical ramifications of resurrection for our life today in volume 4. And I think many Christians are not energized because perhaps they need to revisit the truth and the power of the resurrection.
Absolutely. Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. Well, a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I hope to come visit you in Norway.
Oh, that would be a delight.
I would love it.
We will talk after we stop this recording.
Okay, I would love that.
Ok, så du har fått med deg at dette med Jesu oppstandelse, det er faktisk noe av det aller viktigste som vi leser om i Bibelen. Og det er underforkynt, og det er undervist. Og Jeremiah har på en sånn nydelig måte satt fokus på dette her sånn. Vi håper dette kan inspirere deg. Få tak i bøkene og les om dette likkledet i Torino, for dette er på en måte et vitenskapelig og et historisk faktum som vitner om hva som har skjedd. Og det kan du få med deg. Du finner mer om Asialink på asialink.no. Du kan få bladet vårt Rapport fra Asia helt gratis, og du kan også gå inn på en side som heter torinokledet.no. Der finner du faktisk norsk materiale om dette her, skrevet av Jostein Andreassen og Oddvar Søvik. Håper du har hatt glede av dette programmet, og at du skjønner at oppstandelsens kraft, den er vesentlig og klarere enn noensinne. Takk for at du fulgte oss i dag. Herren med deg.